live. All right, what's up, everyone? Today I have a special guest with us, uh, an abductee, Byron Lacy. He's going to share his story with us and has a decent amount of credible evidence as far as photos of puncture wounds and other types of marks that he's woken up with. So let's bring him right on.
John?
Hey, Byron, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Great. Thanks for taking the time out to join us tonight. I appreciate it.
Well, I enjoy it. I appreciate it to be here.
Nice. So how was your holiday?
It was pretty good. I stayed at home, so it was safe.
Gotcha. I understand that. So you're
It was
born
like
and raised
any
in
other
Texas,
day.
right? Yeah.
Yes, that's true. I
Nice.
live in
That's
Texas now.
Nice. One of my favorite states. I've been there a few times.
I like it.
Definitely. So I'd like to get into your story. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's all right. You go ahead.
Okay. So I'd like to jump right into your story and let's talk about your first experience that you had.
Well, my first experience in the book, it says it was in 1955, but I realized about a year ago that it was actually in 1956. We moved to Seagoville, Texas from Anthony, Texas, which is near El Paso, where my father was working as a prison guard. And we moved on my birthday, and it was snowing. That's why I remember that. It was snowing when we went through Elephant Butte. So we got into Texas, and that's how I know it happened in 1956. My mother would put me to bed every night, and she would tuck me in. And I'd usually have to kick the covers off after she left because it would be too hot. Well, one night she took me in and put me to bed, and she kissed me goodnight on the forehead, and then she left the room after she asked me if I wanted the hall light left on, which I said I did. And I turned around to lay down, and there were three little men standing at the foot of my bed, which sort of blew my mind because I didn't know how three men, little bitty, would be at the end of my bed. So it didn't scare me, but it was shocking and unexpected. So I yelled for my mother, and I turned around, and she came through the door. When she got in the room, I turned back around, and they were gone. So I told her what had happened, and she just said, okay. And she tucked me in and said, now you go to sleep. And she left the room. That was all that happened that night. The next night, the exact same thing happened, and it happened totally in the same way. Then the night after that, it happened, and Mom came in, and she sat down on the bed, and she said, son, don't call me in here anymore because they're just not going to be here when I get here. You're going to have to learn to deal with them yourself. And she tucked me in, and she left the room. But this time, when I turned around, they were there again. And I didn't call Mom because she told me not to. And there was also another being that was standing over in the side of the room, which is a little dark because of the light didn't reach that far, but he was almost as tall as the ceiling, and he looked like Captain Hook from the Peter Pan book that I had from Disney. So all of a sudden I felt like I was tied down or something. I couldn't move. And I managed to be able to look to my side, and it was about all I could look. And I saw that I wasn't tied, but still I couldn't move. And then the bed started rotating, and the room got bigger. And the Captain Hook started dancing around over in the side of the room. This went on for a little while, and I was getting ready to get really afraid when all of a sudden everything was back to normal. They were all gone. Captain Hook was gone, and I could move. So I thought about it for a minute, and I was wondering, was this a dream or something? And I go, no, I'm awake. So I went to sleep, and I thought, I don't want to see them if they come back. So I pulled the cover over my head, and for years I slept with the cover over my head. So I don't know if they came back or not. I'm sure they did. But that was my first experience with them.
Wow. I did the same thing, pulling the covers over my head. That was like my first instinct to do when I seen them. I never did that before in my life. That was like right away, like just I got into the fetal position, and yeah, so I know that feeling. Like you're almost like waiting for them to touch you, or you're waiting for something to happen while you're like under that blanket. That's at least how I felt. That's
Right.
pretty intense. I freaked out when it happened to me. I wish I wasn't as scared as I was, but this happens out of nowhere. You never can expect it.
I think I was too naive to be afraid
Mm,
because nothing like that had happened to me.
mm, that's understandable. See, when I seen their eyes for the first time, I kind of knew everything immediately. It kind of really just hit me like in a second.
Had you heard of aliens before?
Yeah, I was into them, but I only thought they would take people on lonely highways or in the middle of nowhere. I had no idea they'd be in a suburban neighborhood. That's one of the biggest things that shocked me, actually.
I had no idea that they even existed. I didn't know what they were. I didn't know what to think of them as because we didn't
Oh,
have a television set and there weren't very many television shows about aliens in 1956. And in fact, we didn't watch them anyway if there were. So, I was just like, what the heck is this?
how old were you again at that time?
6 years old.
That's young. Wow.
And they knew I liked Captain Hook, obviously, because they had him there. I think that was to keep me from being quite as afraid as I could have been.
So that was your first experience with them. You had many more after that, right?
I didn't
Seeing
have
aliens.
any, I never saw them again until after 2009. I didn't know I was an abductee until 2009. Now, after I got married in 81, about a year or two after we were married, my wife said, you hurt yourself. Well, actually, I was looking at a bruise on my leg and I was wondering how that got there. And she said, you hurt yourself in bed while you're asleep more than anyone I've ever heard of. And it was then that I started realizing I was waking up with these wounds on me, a few punctures and lots of bruises.
Uh, it, it's incredible how similar we are because I used to wake up with sprained ankles and like sprained wrists with no explanation. I had an ex at the time used to tell me like, I was a bum. I didn't want to work. I was making stuff up. She's like, "How do you sprain your ankle while you're sleeping?" Like, I do not know. I don't know what to tell you. Like, and there's a crazy time period. I was waking up with bruises, but I wasn't putting two to two together. I was kind of just dismissing it. I didn't realize until 15 years later that that was something that could have been going on. So I definitely know that feeling.
Well, it was not until the 80s that I actually saw that someone had been abducted, but I didn't think it had happened to me. In fact, in 80, uh, it was around 1984 that I actually saw them, but it wasn't the Greys. I I had tried to get a job for after I graduated from school, and I'd gotten one, but it had fallen through. My wife and I were pretty desperate about what we were going to do, so we took a job working a newspaper route at night for the Dallas Morning News. We had to deliver it during the night so it would be there when they woke up in the morning. And we
Mhm.
had an old Volkswagen. And the first night we went out, the brakes started squealing really loud. We got the papers and we did the first deliveries. And the woman told us that if we didn't finish the week, we wouldn't get paid anything. So we were hoping to finish the week. The next morning, I took the car in, and the guy looked it over and he said, "There's nothing wrong with it. It must have been a rock or something that got into the wheel." Then the next night we went out, and the steering wheel started jerking from side to side. My wife was trying to drive, and I took her place, and we were having to go real slow, which was going to make it really bad because it had taken us like 6 hours the night before going regular speed. So we, in the middle of the night, we just said, to heck with it, and we quit, and we took the newspapers back, and we quit. And she said, well, you're not going to get paid. I said, I understand that. We went home, and we were going to sleep, and I was pretty desolate. I didn't know what we were going to do. And I was actually thinking about going out in the woods the next day and killing myself, but I was going to wait till morning to do it. We got into bed, and I had this dream that we drove all over Nacogdoches, and then we stopped at a friend's house, and we sat at a picnic table, and I left everybody and went into the backyard. And there was a glass cabinet like from an old store made in the 20s that was oak wood with glass for a display cabinet. And there was a little head down in the bottom of it, and that attracted my attention. Well, actually, the little men came the day before this, but I'll go ahead with this and finish up. I looked at this head, and suddenly it sprang up into a man about 6'5", 6'6" tall, and he had a scraggly beard, and he looked sort of scary, and he was real skinny, and he looked strange. And he said, we have jobs for you. Don't kill yourself. And then he turned into a crystal skull. He was a crystal skull. And I had never heard of them at that time. And he zoomed off into space and was gone. And then I woke up, and I told my wife I'd just had the strangest dream. And she said, so did I. Well, it turned out she had the same dream, except that she had sat in a car with my friend when I had gone into the backyard. And my friend was afraid because the landlord was coming. So they hid under the car, and they saw his feet as he walked into the backyard. And then we woke up. That's where our dreams were different. She just stayed there hiding. Well, the night before that, I started having this dream, and there was this glass cabinet at the side of our bed, the same one that I saw the next night. But this glass cabinet, and these little men about 2 foot tall would pop in on top of the cabinet, and they looked sort of like bell jars or men with army helmets on. But they didn't look like men. They just looked different. I can't describe them. And they said, he's coming. And they disappear. And then they say, he's coming. And they disappear. And so he came the next night. But they did that all night long. So obviously they thought I really was going to kill myself, and they were going to keep it from happening.
Wow.
And the next day, after the second day, we went to this bookstore that we'd go to, and these two people came in, and they told us that they were hiring janitors at the college. So I went down there later that day, and I got hired that day, and I got put on the floor. Well, he put me in a building, and another woman in a building where he hired both of us the same day. And he stepped back and crossed his arms and looked at it, and he switched us. When he did that, he put me in the education building where I had just gotten my teaching certificate. The first day there, my major professor saw me, and he said, I will get you a job. He asked me where I wanted to work, and I said, well, somewhere in East Texas if possible. At the end of the year, after I'd worked there about a year and a day, he came up to me and said, come to my office. And he took me in there, and he told me he'd found me a job teaching in Livingston. In fact, he'd found me 2 jobs, and I could pick whichever one I wanted.
That's amazing.
And I think they engineered that.
I think they do stuff like that. I have a strong feeling they interfere when they feel like they have to.
Yes. I think they made him change the building. And they made me go to that store probably, or coaxed me along so I would. And I met those people there. They showed up while I was there.
Wow. That's a good thing they contacted you. You know.
I think they've gotten me several jobs over the years.
Interesting. I wish they would help you with that. So no, that's interesting. I like that you say that because it seems like they're interacting with you and actually helping you along with some stuff. For me, I just feel like they're just it's more of a like an experiment, or they're watching me instead of like not really helping me much. They feel like curious almost about me. Is the way I look at it. I don't see them interacting in my life too much. They're just like messing with me or like looking at me.
I understand. They're looking at me too, or they're checking on me. You know, in 1952, it was discovered that I had cancer, and I'd been sick for a year. They took me to a doctor in Marble Falls where we lived, and he could never figure anything out. And he sent me to a specialist in Austin after a year. And my dad said when the specialist came down on the elevator with me in his arms, he was as white as his coat, as his doctor's coat. And he told them then that I had cancer, that they were going to operate the next week, that they were surprised that I was even alive. And I had a sarcoma. And he said almost everyone dies from a sarcoma. And he told them that they should probably go try and have another baby so that when I did die, it would lessen the blow. And I think they kept me from dying of that cancer.
It's definitely possible. And you see like them interfering, not interfering, but almost helping you along. In a way.
They they've kept me from dying about 9 times. Sometimes in car accidents, once from a cannon exploding. And I've thought about this a lot because, you know, in a lot of science fiction shows, they say if you mess with time, you could mess up everything. Well, I've heard that they know our entire life if we're an abductee, and they deal with us very much. I've heard that from several different sources. And so that's how I think they were able to save me sometimes in a moment's notice, because they knew it was going to happen. But obviously, either they didn't care if they messed up the rest of the time or not. They wanted me alive. I asked them once when I was meditating and I had contact with them, and I said, and I was trying to find a way to get them to say something that would give me some clue about what they were all about. And I said, hey, why have you saved my life so many times? And the voice said, we want you alive. And then it disappeared. I'm going, that's nothing. That's not telling me anything. Obviously, you want me alive.
Yeah,
they're tricky.
Yes, they are. They're tricky and they're sneaky. So Infrared has a question here. Do you think your experiences helped your creativity, or that you chose to be creative to try to explain your experiences? So,
I think they put me in a place where I did start doing art. I was an English major and I got my bachelor's degree, but the minute I got my bachelor's degree, I switched over to art because I had met a guy who's still my friend, and he showed me his art and I just loved it. So I decided to go into art. Now, I didn't ever explore my experiences, but everything I've done, like I wouldn't have been able to write my book if I hadn't gotten a degree in English. And I wouldn't have gotten to where I got if I hadn't been an artist and gone into Dallas and all these things and did all that. I've shown in a lot of galleries and I've shown in some museums in different places in the United States and one in France. But every time I'd get my career going real good, the economy would fall apart. So that's why I ended up working for the welfare department.
Okay. I saw another question here. Maybe not.
It did get me into working on expanding my consciousness, which is, I think, one of the things they like us to do. to meditate and stuff. And that happened because of being in art.
I've had similar messages, like to center myself and to concentrate, and they've sent me messages before repeating the phrase that we are ready. And I remember saying out loud, like, I'm not ready. And they're like, we are ready. I'm like, I'm not ready. We are ready. Like an argument. It's pretty amazing.
Yep.
So I bet they communicate subtly sometimes. They tell you enough to get your attention. They don't give you a full blown conversation, but they'll tell you a couple words, to get your attention so you understand.
I think they wrote a message to me in an email on a website, not in an email, but on a website that I went to about astrology, and there was a transit in there. This was around 2008 or 2009 that said I was going to have a near-death experience. And I did, but I didn't realize it. And I didn't go into the light. One night I was getting ready to meditate, and this voice in my head said, "You are going to be given the opportunity to die." And I thought, and this was right after I'd read that, so I should have put two and two together, but I didn't. And I didn't know about the aliens. So I went, well, that's the weirdest thing for me to think of. That happened 3 nights in a row. On the 4th night, there was no voice, and I didn't think about it. But I laid down to meditate, and all of a sudden, I couldn't tell I was breathing. I couldn't feel my heart. I couldn't feel the bed. I did not see phosphenes. It was completely black in my eyesight. And then a bright light appeared next to me. And I felt like I could get into that light, but I didn't know if I wanted to, because I didn't know if I would. I thought, maybe you won't come back. So, and before the light appeared, though, all of my negative things in my mind from my life left me. They disappeared. It was like a life review that you read about, but I didn't catch on to that either. Then I went, and I live 15 miles out of town. It would take forever if I wake up and I've had a heart attack. I'm not going to go. And this voice goes, you've said you wanted this, and now that you can go, you're not going to go. And he laughed 3 times. The first time he laughed, the wall of light turned into a sphere of light. The second time it got smaller. The third time it was gone, and I was wide awake.
So did you hear the voice in your mind, or did you hear it out loud?
I heard it in my head, in the very center of my head. When I hear my voice in my head, it's usually sort of towards the front. And this voice was totally different. Okay. And I heard that voice again later after I knew about the aliens.
Yeah. See, I've heard voices in my mind, but there's been a few times where I hear the voices like up towards my ceiling. Like I actually look up at my ceiling. Yeah. Like one time this voice, like my ex-girlfriend was just yelling at me for no reason. And she walked away. I heard a voice above me say, "Don't let her talk to you like that." I looked up at the ceiling and I was like, why don't you try that, buddy? Like, it's not that easy. But that was, but I've heard it in my mind a couple of times. That one time it was definitely above me. I don't know what that could have been, but
it was them. I don't think they have to talk in our minds, but they just usually do. Or they could make you perceive it being above the ceiling, even when they were talking in your mind. Because they can make us see or hear anything.
Yeah, I agree with that. So, when did you start thinking about actually taking pictures and documenting the marks that you were waking up with?
That was after I knew about the aliens, and I found out about them in 2009. I was going home from dinner, and a stargate opened up in the end of a stoplight, and up in the air. And I looked around me and I could tell no one else saw it but me. And it was like a Stargate, but it didn't have a frame around it. It was like a 4 foot wide square, circle flat of swirling water. But it started out the size of a dinner plate and it expanded. The next week, the very same thing happened. Well, the minute the light changed, the thing exploded, but it didn't make any noise. It just burst, but all of the stuff disappeared before it hit the ground. I told a friend about it, and he didn't say anything. He was a friend that actually had shown me some stuff about UFOs, but mostly I slept through them. The next week, on the same day, about the same time, the same thing happened, and I told him about it. And we went for a walk because we walked for exercise. We got back to his apartment, and I said, I was getting ready to go, and I said, man, what do you think about this? And he said, do you really want to know? And I said, yeah, I really want to know. And he said, are you sure? I said, yes, I'm sure. Now, he had heard all of my stories about stuff before I knew about aliens. And he said, okay, I think you're an alien abductee. I went, you're crazy. You're crazy. And he said, okay. And he turned around and he wrote down a web address. And he goes, you go look at this when you get home. And then you tell me if you think I'm crazy. So I left and I threw that on the desk when I got home, crumpled up, and I didn't look at it. And I didn't look at it for a week. And after I did, I answered these 99 questions that if you answer most of them, you're an abductee, maybe.
I've done it. Yeah.
Well, I answered all the ones that were for men, all of them. So I had about 85, 90 questions that said yes. Then I looked at other stuff and I realized that I had PTSD and all my life just about. And I realized a bunch of other things. Anyway, then I started looking for an alien abductee investigator in the area, and I found one in Houston. And I wrote to him and told him a lot of my stories. And Daryl Sims, the alien hunter, he's been on TV and he goes to different places. Well, he encouraged me to photograph things. And at first I just couldn't do it. I'd try to do it and I couldn't. So he said, well, just keep trying. And I did. And then I started sending him pictures of my bruises. He go, yep, I've seen them like this. I'd send him pictures of my punctures. He goes, yep, I've seen him like this. You know, everything I showed him and everything I told him, he told me that's what happens to abductees. You are the real thing. I even talked at his Houston UFO Network meeting a couple of times at his members after I started working on my resume of abductions.
I've talked to him through email a few times throughout the year, and always something happens where I just can't continue on the conversation, or whatever, personal life or whatever. It's just it wasn't meant to happen at that time. So hopefully
I understand completely.
I'll try to reach out to him again at some point, but he's one of the few that always responded right away and seemed more interested than the rest of the people I contacted. So
he was a big help to me. And I wrote to Kathleen Martin a few times of Barney Hill and Betty Hill. And I sent her my photographs. And she would always tell me that she'd seen those photographs. And when I sent her the one that's on my wrist, the 21 punctures, she said she wanted a copy of that. She said she'd never seen one that orderly and everything, but that she had actually seen a person that had more punctures than usual, as well as me.
Wow. I spoke to her once as well, maybe around 2010, because at that point I was trying to talk to anybody I could because I was having PTSD bad around then. And she told me pretty much like, they come a lot more than you want to accept. It's not just like a once every 5 year type thing,
Right.
And, which I didn't want to hear that, but most likely it was the truth.
Well, I talked to her just through email, but she was still a big help to me because, sometimes you think you're going crazy.
Yeah.
When this first starts.
That's for sure. All right, so let me pull up some of these pictures and get into these. Um, I think that. Let's see one second. All right, there we go. We're good. Okay. So, out of all the pictures you sent me, I believe this is the first one by date on 2012. Is that correct?
Yes, I believe so. Well, there were probably some bruises from that point, but I didn't send them to you. I've got a
Mhm.
lot of pictures of bruises, but the bruise looks the same every time,
Yeah.
or mine do. These are scoop marks, and it is
Mhm.
believed by Gerald Sims and some other researchers that when they were using implants that were made of metal, they would surround them with a small flap of skin and sew it up or seal it around it and put it in your body. And that way your body wouldn't reject it because it
Mhm.
wouldn't know what was inside. It would just know there was a lump of your skin inside of you.
Mhm.
And I have one that's on the other side, but you can't see it. Now, that bruise thing down near the hand, that I did myself in construction.
See, that's funny because I work in construction too, and I go to the gym. So I usually dismiss those marks for work, but after a while you realize, it can't be done. It's not a scratch.
Right.
But so, how long is this after you noticed them? Like, is this like, are they healed a couple weeks afterwards, or this that morning you seen them?
When I found them, they were healed. In
Mm-hmm.
fact, this is taken the day that I found them, May the 15th, 2012.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I found them because I was looking at that other wound that isn't circled, and I knew that wound was mine. Then I looked at those and I go, oh, this is weird. So I circled them and photographed them and sent them to Gerald Sims. And he's the one that told me they were scoop marks.
Yeah, it must have been deep because it didn't. So, do these marks look the same on your legs today, or are they completely healed?
They're the same. They never healed any more than this. And they're a
See,
little
mine.
bit ripply on the inside.
Yeah, I see that right in here. See,
You
mine
can't,
heal,
you can't,
but what happens is they're just discolored.
understand.
All right. This one kind of blows my mind because this is something I've actually seen on a few other people. Can you explain this one for us?
It's my favorite mark, and it seems to be made by three punctures at the tips of the triangle. If you'll notice, the tips of the triangle are just a little bit darker, especially the top of it. So
Yeah,
somehow
I
that
can.
made this triangular shape, and it's gone now, but it stayed discolored for a long time,
Wow.
maybe half a year.
Yeah, it's the same with mine. They stay discolored. You can always you can like faintly see them. So what do you think this actually is? Do you think it's from like a procedure? It was like a branding. It just I don't know. It's different
I
than
think
everything
that
else.
they're, I don't know what the shape means, but I think that in these punctures, they're putting some kind of medicine in us. And one psychic told me that it was an inoculation against diseases that we might run into on the ship. And I saw some punctures on another abductee's hand that had three or four of them. Well, she had four lines, little lines in a row next to each other.
Mm.
And then several punctures, and they were sort of random if I'm remembering right, but they were real close knit. One of them was stained blue by some kind of liquid that had gotten into it. And she just found it when she woke up, so she wasn't around any liquid. And so it seems to me that the liquid was put in with the puncture, maybe like a hypodermic needle, only
Mm.
smaller. I think their medicines work a lot better than ours do, and it doesn't take as much.
I mean, these are all signs to me of medical procedures. Is the way I look at them.
Yes, yes, me too.
And
Everybody thinks they are.
I would have to assume it's for a good reason. Because if they were nefarious, we probably wouldn't be alive anymore if they're injecting us with stuff. So,
Right. Would be
which
sick.
I find it weird too, because I'm not like the healthiest person in the world, so they're not like fixing me of anything. So I always find it strange what the actual intentions are.
Some people think they're looking for DNA or they're getting samples of DNA, but I don't know. This is one of the bruises. Now,
Hmm.
in meditation, I saw an instrument. I used to think these were finger punk bruises, but as you see, that's the first day when I woke up, found on May 19th, 2015, and it
Hmm.
looks like it's already healing. And
Hmm.
it happened sometime during the night. But while meditating, I saw an instrument that looked a lot like a screwdriver with a spear on the end of it. On the end, like here's the a spear on the end of it, and small. In fact, the spear was about the size of that bruise. And I think that they do something to us with that instrument, and it causes the bruise. It's not a pressure bruise, and it's not from hitting us or anything like that.
Yeah, it almost comes
Because they're
from inside. Like, yeah, it looks similar to something I have as well. Yeah, but it's not a regular bruise, which is weird.
they tell me it's like a second stage or third stage instead of fresh. And they use when I bruise myself, this bruise I thought was so strange because it has that little shape in the center that is not bruised. And it's like the size of a grain of rye, pretty much.
Yeah,
You see it?
right there.
And it's fairly rectangular. So it's like there
Hmm.
was a hole in the sphere or something
And
where
then
it
you have
didn't bruise that.
the same bruising and discoloration as the other picture.
I took a lot of pictures in April 2015.
Yeah, I noticed
And
a lot of these are close together.
now I
Wow.
had marks all the time, but I was just into taking pictures. And that's when I first started being able to take the pictures.
Hmm.
There was like
You
a
know,
block in my mind against them.
they probably didn't want you taking pictures of them yet. It's weird. It's weird how they work. They're
Yes, it
trying to figure
is.
this stuff out. And it's pretty fascinating stuff. So is this the same picture as the last one, or just a different incident?
It's the same bruise.
Okay.
I
Yeah. So
don't know why I
what,
take.
what do you think that could be? You think that had, like something to do with the implant because of the shape of it?
I think it's an indention in that sphere that I told you about on the end of the screwdriver shaped handle thing.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and the way the discoloration of bruising is similar in all pictures, or most of the pictures, means that their instruments, I'm guessing, have like the same effect of the bruising.
Right.
This stuff fascinates me.
Me too. And
Like what?
I've seen those bruises on other people.
So, yes, me too. Especially that purplish goldish color like that. Um, Here's another
Yeah.
one of these triangles right in your knuckle.
That is the second triangle I got, and it's the only one besides I've only received two.
Now, are these on the same hand?
Um, nope, that's on my right hand. The other
Okay.
was on my left hand. And there's no skin missing. It's just that color in my skin.
Yeah, I can see it. It's like it's been fried or. It's
Like
because
it's been
I had,
tattooed,
yeah, I've had
but
three
it went
different marks.
away.
Well, that's good. A knuckle is a weird place. I wonder. I always try to figure out what they're doing. I was wondering why they would choose a knuckle for something, a procedure. It'd be like a
Well,
weird place, but
I I think you could look at it and think that you hit your knuckle against something.
mm, uh,
But since I'd already had one triangular mark, I knew I didn't hit myself against anything. Plus, I'd been asleep.
yeah. It's funny when people try to think of reasons why you have holes in your legs in the middle of the night. I've heard I had a skin disease. I've heard it could be bed bugs or
Yeah,
cockroaches. But yeah, you know
I've
when you
looked
wake
up
up, it's something different. That's
I've looked up bed bug marks, and they don't look like these at all. The bites they
no,
leave.
yeah, not at all. Wow. Yeah, this is something that I want to say is kind of common in abductees that I've seen that triangle. Even
Yeah,
just having punctured wounds that form the shape of a triangle, not actually being solid like that. Like a triangle is a very common form.
they like three for some reason.
I can see that. Now here's a interesting one because I had something similar as this. So this is on your ankle.
My right ankle, and it was
Right
taken in
ankle.
2016.
Oh, let's see. Okay. Wow. So this is something that some people could probably dismiss as being, you know, not out of the ordinary. But that being said, the holes I see are very similar to the ones I've had. Like especially this one right here, where they have a pair of holes together, like the
Right.
instrument possibly have like two prongs. That's something I've noticed. That's similar as well. Like the pairs of holes together, and then like you got big ones, and then you got some little ones down here.
I also discovered that they use the metric system because if you measure these with a ruler, 1 inch ruler and everything, they
Mhm.
come out all differently, even though they look like they're the same space. But if you use a metric ruler, all of a sudden everything makes sense.
I never thought about measuring or labeling them like you've done. It's a good idea. I just take the pictures and put them on my computer, and they get lost in the shuffle. But
Uh,
so
some of these have a definite pattern to them, like some of yours.
yeah,
Like you have one
like,
that's a square.
mhm. This even has somewhat of a triangle pattern. This little angle right here.
It actually does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I hadn't thought of that.
Here's one
There,
that's on your wrist.
you, there were 21 punctures on the first day. This is the third day. There were 3 rows of 7, but now part of them are missing. The scabs fell off.
Mhm.
So bugs wouldn't make, and those are pretty much equally spaced. Bugs don't do anything like that.
No, not any bugs I know of. But that looks like a medical
Me,
procedure to me.
yes.
And they're
That's
all
the
your.
mark.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's the mark that Kathleen Marden wanted to keep the picture of Betty and Barney Hill. She's
Mhm.
related to them.
Yeah, yeah, she's a nice lady. I like her. And what I find fascinating is that these pictures, none of them are like a duplicate the size of the triangle. The rest of these have different patterns and marks, which to me means they're
Right.
different procedures, right?
I think so too. Apparently, maybe they make a pattern for a specific procedure.
Or they're different tools. Okay, so these are pictures of yours and mine that I have up here together for comparison. This one, this is your picture here on the left. On the right, these are marks I've woken up with, and they have this similar type of colored bruising.
Right.
Mine have these 6 puncture holes in the middle. You know, that 2 rows of 3, and a bruising around it. This hurt. Like when I woke up, this hurt. It was on my stomach. When I sat up, I felt like the pain was all the way deep in my tissue. But
wow.
I couldn't pick it up on camera that well, but it was more yellow, almost like your image. That
Yes.
golden yellow type bruising. So I found that pretty interesting how they're similar but different, like everything.
They put them in difficult places to photograph sometime.
Yeah, that's true. Because there's some, like, I need somebody else to take the pictures for me because I just can't do it.
Right. I had a puncture on the top of my head one day, and I couldn't photograph that for the world.
Wow. And this one kind of blew me away because this is what we were talking about earlier about the 2 puncture holes together. Which you can see on mine, they're pairs of 2. I mean,
yeah,
the marks are almost identical. See, this mark right here is almost identical to these pairs. And you can see they've been scooped out. You know, they scooped the flesh and everything. It's not like a cut or a burn or a scrape. And this one over here was actually on the same knee. This one and this one were on the same leg. But these 3 look similar to these as well. It has those bigger ones, and you got a couple small ones, as well as over here. You got some bigger ones mixed in with some small ones. So my theory is it could be the same type of procedure done by 2 different things.
This is the one I think are in some kind of inoculations or some kind of medicine has been put into our body.
Mm-hmm. Now, these wounds over here of yours, were they pretty deep, or is that just like the surface?
They're about the same depth as yours. That's the see. I didn't wash them off when I took the picture
because mine felt like they almost went down to the bone. I wasn't able to wear pants for like 2 days. I didn't shower for 2 days because it burned so much. I had a hard time walking.
Mine are not very deep. Mine are just into the skin.
Like I felt like I could have took something and just stuck it down in the hole. That's how deep it felt.
I can tell one of them is really deep. That one.
And what's funny is the morning of, they weren't holes. It was more like looked like a big scrape or like a burn almost. And they changed throughout the day. And by the end of the day, there's individual holes I seen.
Wow.
And these are the ones we looked at of the triangles. Wow. That's something I haven't woke up with yet. That would kind of blow me away. Here's another good example. Kind of got the square pattern here.
Right.
And I got this little square pattern. Not exactly the same, but kind of get the idea.
Pretty close.
Yes. And this was pretty small on my leg as well. This isn't being a lot. So they almost might have been that size or a tiny bit bigger. Huh. And when I wake up, I try to think of every explanation of why these wouldn't be what I think they are. But nothing ever makes sense.
Right, I know. The same for me.
I see some of the bruising are showing same discoloration. Wow. So
I knew what.
I was gonna say you haven't had woken up with any marks. You said for about like 3 years.
Well, this year I've had marks, bruises twice. The year before I had a few more, but they've gotten to be a lot less. They were marks at least once a month. And one month, during one of the weeks of one month, I had marks every morning for 7 days. And people wouldn't believe me because there were too
Yeah,
many of them.
yeah. I know the feeling. And what's funny is they think of the most outrageous excuses for what they are.
Yes,
Stuff that doesn't make any sense at all. Just so that they can like calm their mind and not have to worry about it. You know.
right. That's exactly true. Bed
Like,
bugs.
yeah, I mean, I told someone I was like, "Do you think bed bugs like marched up my leg and just bit me in one area and left in pairs and
Right.
racing? It's impossible. Impossible."
But they make a thing that looks sort of like a rash over a wide area instead of like this. They don't look anything like this.
Mhm. This is something of mine. This is like more of a mark that kind of changed throughout the 24 hours. It started off as this one on the left, which looked similar to one of your bruises, I believe, but then it ended up
Yes.
changing throughout the day, and by the next morning, it was a complete circle on the right, which I
Those are
find
good
interesting.
pictures.
Thanks. The first picture, I didn't think something weird was up, but that just looked strange. So I just took a picture just to take it. And then a couple hours later, when I saw the bruise like moving around my knee, that's when I knew something was up. Because
Right.
Never seen a bruise move like that and then form a circle. So I don't know what the heck that means.
I don't either. It's amazing that it didn't all happen at once.
Yeah, like usually bruises shouldn't be able to move and form circles
Maybe
on their
they
own
did
like.
it. Maybe they did it late at night so that it was closer to time for you to wake up.
Yeah, I never thought of that. Could have maybe been like three different things, three different experiences, not just one. Huh.
Well, I mean, they could have done the first one about an hour
Yeah.
before you woke up, so it wasn't really dark. During the day, as time went on, it got darker and darker, and the next
Uh-huh.
morning, real dark.
Yeah. Let's see here. So this is the one in the middle is the same picture as the one on the right. So it shows like you can kind of see the holes, but not completely. Then throughout the day, they kind of show themselves even more. It kind of looks like a scrape over here, not as
It does.
detailed. And then when I looked at this later in the day, it kind of blew me away because it's not what it looked like earlier in the day, which is like right here. See, it's real red and this area is irritated.
Yep.
It's like another picture where like the wounds kind of change. Maybe it's healing super fast. I have no idea, but I always found that interesting. Then one on my elbow I woke up with. These two are the same morning. The one in my
I
elbow,
did.
it's hard to. Okay.
I did have a wound on the middle of my hand that had blood on it, and it healed in 6 hours. It was completely gone. There was no puncture. Didn't hurt. I could scratch my hand and it didn't hurt. So they had done something to make it heal really fast.
Wow. I got so many questions about this kind of stuff. Oh, so this is something I wanted to show you that you mentioned in the resume that you saw a being from um, what was that movie called? Mind on blank. The Communion. So this drawing is something I've been seeing the past probably month. Have you ever seen anything like this?
No, I don't think so. Now I've seen a mantis wearing a robe, but they're real tall. I have seen those very short men, but they look more like they had army helmets on.
Like this almost?
Yes,
Because this is from the movie The Communion, and
that looks
this is
more like them.
so you've seen something similar to this.
Yes, the men that kept popping in and saying he's coming.
So wow, because the face that I drew is almost similar. This is what I see
Yeah,
running
it
back and
seems
forth in
to
my
me,
hallway.
right?
And the robe, it had like a robe like this. I remember it was way too big for it, but it was glowing bright white, and it just kept running back and forth in my hallway. I saw it go by like 3 or 4 times.
Wow.
So I've been recording my hallway trying to capture this thing on camera, and I haven't seen it since. It was running just like that, like it was being sneaky, like behind my back. So yeah, that's I heard these people see these, and I also heard it's somewhat rare. But why it's running through my hallway back and forth, I would like to know.
Wow. That's really strange. Yes.
Okay, and this is a drawing I made of the grays I've seen. I want to know if this looks similar to what you've seen. Let me zoom in.
From what I can remember, yes. I think their faces may have been just a little bit fuller below the eyes, but basically that's it. Big head, those weird shaped eyes, little
But
nostril hole,
did it
long
look
mouth.
did it look very basic like this, or did it have more details? Because the one I saw, this was all the details it had. There's nothing else more to draw.
No,
Like
there
there's no
wasn't anything
bone
else.
structure, or nothing, no wrinkles in the face or no cheekbones. Right, it was pretty plain.
Right.
This is probably 90% accurate. This drawing, I would think. This face is like burned in my brain forever.
I can imagine.
Yep. Yeah, I've seen two of these at the same time. One was a little taller than the other. Which I think it might have been like a male and female type thing. It's kind of the vibe I got. Yeah. So, considering all your experiences, everything you've been through, you consider your interaction with these beings a positive thing, I would say, right?
Yes, I do. They've saved my life 9 times. I wouldn't even be alive if it weren't for them. And like I said, I think they've helped me get jobs too.
I don't think they ever saved my
told me
life, but I'm sorry, go ahead.
they told me at one point during an experience in another dimension that I come from them, that I'm one of them. My soul is one of theirs.
That's so crazy you said that. Someone told me that about a week and a half ago. Like that's what they felt. And when they told me it, I felt this not a sick feeling in my stomach, but I almost felt like they kind of knew what they were talking about. Maybe something I don't want to accept. But I definitely felt it when I was told that, and I believe it's possible.
A psychic told me that. She lives in England, and I talked to her email and MP3s. She sent me the reading on an MP3, and she said, you may think this is funny, but you're one of them. Well, after a year and everything she told me had come true, except that, of course, I decided to meditate on it, and I did. And all of a sudden, when I finally felt that it was true, I suddenly got pulled out of my body at the back of my neck into this vast nothingness. And once again, I had no notion that my body even existed. And there was a wall of geometric lines of light and these 3 beings that looked like they were made of light. And they said, "We're very proud of you. We've been waiting for you to realize this." And then they told me that I was one of them, and they downloaded a bunch of stuff in my brain that I came in so fast I couldn't remember it. But I think over time it's come out. So, and then they put me back in my body. And I mean, they didn't take time to get me into that trance. They just pulled me. It was like I could feel fingers going into the back of my head.
I believe it because from the communication I get, they feel like they're impatient. They're like kind of like, hurry up, like what's taking you so long? Like come on, like what more do you need us to do? Like let's go. Like what are you doing? Like that's the kind of feelings I get from most of the activities. Like come on, we've been waiting all this time. What more do we need to do for you to believe us? Like let's go. We got stuff to do. It's kind of the feeling.
That's probably true. That's probably the case. And of course, you're doing something now.
Yeah, and I feel like that's what they want me to do. It's very weird, especially when it comes to recording my footage. Is all I do is turn my camera on. I'm not out hunting for anything. It's very simple what I do, and the stuff just presents itself like it wants to be recorded. So I just kind of go with
I
the
think
flow. I don't fight with what I feel like they want me to do. I just go with the flow. Got my hands off the wheel.
they wanted me to write my book, and they wanted me to start talking to people like this.
And you know that pretty much, and you can feel it in your gut that that's what you're supposed to do, right?
Right.
Yeah. Same thing. I feel the same way. Like for me, sharing my videos and talking to other abductees and stuff, I feel like that's what I'm supposed to do. What's supposed to come out of it, I have no idea, but I know it's just what I'm supposed to do.
To
So
help people realize that it's true.
yeah,
And
I
then
think
to help,
there's plenty of evidence and plenty of credible people out there. I think people are looking for the wrong places that are trying to find it out. You know what's going on. There's tons of evidence.
I think so too.
Just what we do with it is the question. Like I've been able to record some almost impossible things. Just a weird feeling, you know. It's not like I said, I don't hunt for this stuff. I just turn on my camera. This little guy right here, it's always recording. I just check the footage later, and I just see what they let me see.
I think that's really good.
Mhm. I think the same with you is with all your experiences. It's just they tell you enough so you know what you have to know to keep moving forward. You know, like when I record, I think like your photos aren't meant for other people to look at. Like really, they're meant more so you personally know what's going on in a way, and then we just decide to share it. Does that make sense?
Yes, definitely.
They don't show you everything. They only show you like just enough, like barely just enough to catch your attention. Like they never never give you the whole thing. It's so frustrating. It's like a game, of, like following the breadcrumbs.
Really. Well, it's no telling how difficult it is for them to show up.
Yeah,
They got to cover
definitely,
a lot of ground.
definitely. But Stone Habit has a question here. How many times have you been visited by grays, and what's the commonalities? Light, smell, fear, etc.
I've seen them two times. Once in 1956 and once in 2009 when they were showing me what they were doing to me. And I couldn't smell anything. I didn't have any fear. I started to get afraid, but the mantis creature that was there with them said, "Don't be afraid." And I wasn't afraid. So I think he was actually controlling my nervous system because just him saying that, that's not enough to make you not be afraid, you know, but I was fine. And they looked alive. And
Yeah,
his voice, when he said, "Don't be afraid," it sounded just like the man in the glass cabinet that said, "We have jobs for you." And then it sounded like someone that's talked to me psychically before, or telepathically, where I heard their voice in my head. The one about the light.
when you hear the voice in your head, is it your voice or is it their voice? Because for me, it's always my
It's
voice.
it's theirs. Mine is totally different from theirs. Of
Okay.
course, they've
For
only
me,
done
it's
it a
like
few times.
they use like my voice in my brain, so it sounds like I'm arguing with myself. It's an insane feeling.
I started arguing with one in Hastings one day about renting a movie, and I realized I was talking out loud, and people were going to think I was nuts because they would be hearing half of an argument. So I shut up, and it still went on. And they didn't want me to rent a movie. They said I wouldn't be able to watch it, and it was about someone locked in a box underground. And I have claustrophobia. Well, I got the movie home, and I tried to watch it. The minute it came on with him locked in the box, I had to turn it off, and I said, "Y'all were right."
That stuff is it's so amazing. Those little bits of what do you call it, communication back and forth. Just, all you gotta say is a couple words or it's a quick thought, very quick and simple, but very effective. It makes sure you
Yes,
know you're not going crazy. You know.
right. No, we're not.
So, what are your plans moving forward as far as like sharing your experiences and stuff? You know, you have a book out, right? Is there anything else that you've been working on?
I have a book out. I talk to people on Facebook. I'm in a support group, and I talk to people there some. Um, People contact me one on one, and like I'm doing another interview in December 3rd, with somebody else. I've done 2 or 3 this year, not too long ago. And this is the first time I've started being on video. Everything else was radio. So that's just my plans. Whatever they bring to me, I'm going to take. Because people just sort of pop up out of nowhere and go, "Hey, you want to do a show?" And I go, "Yeah." And I've never heard of them or anything, you know?
Yeah, it's usually how it happens. I remember reaching out to you probably a year and a half ago about you coming on to my channel, but just wasn't the right time. You know, I let it kind of organically happen. And I
Right.
decided to start doing interviews of abductees, and you're one of the first people that popped in my mind. You know, you have a very credible
Cool.
story, and you have evidence, so it's what I'm kind of looking for. And trying to talk to as many people with knowledge as I can and try to figure some of this out. I think there's some stuff we can figure out. We're not going to figure it all out, but you know, if we all work together and put our minds together, we can figure something out with all this.
We can figure out that the same thing is happening to all of us. And there's only one explanation of what's actually doing it, and that's aliens.
Yeah. So do you think they're actually from space, or do you think they're something else? I don't really believe they're actually from space anymore.
I don't know. They could be from another dimension. They could be from space. They could be from the middle of the earth. They could be from all those places, or it could be different groups from all those places.
Yeah, it's probably a mix of everything.
Probably. I think the ones mostly involved with me are the mantis creature, and he has grays with him. But I've been told that I get visited because I give off a weird vibe at night, or I give off a weird energy, and that some of them will come check me out just once to see what's going on. And I think I've been visited by reptilians once or twice.
Really. I, See, I think they all might have like separate agendas in a way. So I feel like some are looking out for us more than others, or maybe some are watching to make sure others don't do anything harmful under their
I think
watch,
so
or
too.
something like that. You know,
I think you're
something like
right.
that. I've been thinking
'Cause I
about this
don't
stuff
get
a lot.
harmed.
No, I get scared, but I don't get harmed. It's different.
When I see them, I've always just been so amazed that I haven't had time to be afraid. Except that one time in 2009 when they made it go away.
Mm. Yeah, I've seen them once, and I asked them, you know, if you're going to continue what you're doing, I would rather not see you guys ever again. And so far, so good. I think they heard me on that one. 'Cause, but like I said, I feel like they're getting impatient, like they're trying to push me along. And what happens is I get to a certain point and I kind of quit, and they leave me alone because they see it stresses me out. But then a couple months later, it picks up again, and I go a little bit further, and then I quit. So now I'm at a point
Just
where I'm probably further than I've ever been. So I'm just gonna see what happens.
just think about how amazing it is and go with it.
The thing that gets me is like the randomness. Like you're never prepared for when it goes down. It's just like in the blink of an eye.
No, it always comes out of nowhere.
Yeah, I think that's the most scary part. Excuse me, is that it can just happen at any time, anywhere, and most of the time you don't even know.
Right.
You know, it's pretty interesting. Let's see what Stone Hopper says here. I wonder how they would be everywhere. Just yeah,
There's
I've
a
noticed as I've been moving around the past few years, experiences are different everywhere I lived, which is
I, I think that one reason they've been able to show up to save me so quickly is they knew it was going to happen. They knew my future.
mm,
One guy that got abducted by them, they gave him a book. They taught him how to read their language, and they can say a whole bunch. They can say like 200 pages worth of work in 5 or 10 pages. And he learned over a period of time to read this. And they gave a book, and it was about 10 pages. And when he started reading it, he realized that he was reading about things that had happened to him. And then he was reading about things that were going to happen to him. So they knew his entire life. So they knew when I was going to come into a situation where I might die, and they were there to save me.
wow. I've never had a feeling like they saved my life, but I've been in a position where I saved three separate people from drowning. And I always wondered if that had something to do with it.
It could
Once was
be.
two summers in a row when I was a teenager. I seen a baby sitting in the bottom of a 10-foot pool. 2 summers in a row,
Wow.
two different babies just sitting there like nothing was going on, like it was hanging out, just sitting in the bottom of the pool. And I would walk by,
Wow.
dive in, walk in, dive in, pull them out. That happened 2 years in a row. And then one time my friend was in the ocean during a storm. And I couldn't even see him. I just got this weird feeling. I went out there, swam all the way out there. He was drowning. He had to like get on my back and like hold my neck. And I had to swim him back in. So I wonder if that was. I always get a weird feeling, like an alert, like go save that person, and I'll end up doing it. It's really weird. Also, I got a weird thing with pets. Like, you ever see like someone chasing their dog down the street? Well, they would usually like jump into my arms, like away from the homeowners. That's probably happened like 5 times in my life, which I never
Wow.
thought of as much as I was younger. But looking back, I'm like, that's it's enough to think.
Animals like, in general, animals like abductees, even wild animals and insects.
Ah, it's funny you say that. I had a ladybug that was stalking me in my old apartment for like a month. It wouldn't leave my apartment. I was let it sit there. It would just sit on my entertainment center and just walk around. It never happened before in my life ever again. This ladybug would not leave my apartment. I always
I've
thought that was
gotten jumping spiders to move around where I wanted them to by just concentrating on them.
wow.
I had one that I used to take a spoon of water and put it up on the wall near him, about 3 inches from him, and he would come down and drink out of the spoon, and then he'd leave. Now, I
That's
didn't
pretty cool.
attribute that to aliens until just now, but it could have been, or it could have been my ability.
Yeah, looking back at all those things like you never questioned or might have missed in the past, a lot of stuff starts popping up where it makes a little more sense now. That could be extraterrestrials or something. Like I had missing time when I was younger and never thought nothing of it. I thought I was just dumb, like something happened, like my brain just stopped working for a second. But now looking back,
I,
you know,
I think they make us slightly psychic, or a lot psychic.
I guess we would have to
Maybe
be
it,
communicate.
maybe it comes from being around them or for them talking to us. I don't know. Maybe they train us. I've heard they train us on the ships,
Mhm.
but I don't
Oh,
know.
well, the question I want to ask before we wrap this up is: have you ever seen or dealt with any other beings besides the aliens? As far as like shadow people, ghosts, all those other random things, orbs.
I've seen orbs, lots of them, in my house with a camera. In fact, they would pour out of the floor and race around the room, and I would look at them with the camera. And one of them one day came around the room straight at me and stopped right in front of my camera and then went around me,
Wow.
and I lost it. So it's in an old computer stuck that won't work anymore.
I
But
have a lot
yeah,
of
and
footage
they
that's
love,
stuck on.
my cats could see them, and my cats chased them for a while. but they realized they couldn't catch them, and so they gave up.
Yeah, they move pretty fast. They're faster than any bugs I've ever seen. That's for sure.
Yes. Oh, yeah. They're not bugs.
Yeah,
I
not at
think
all.
they are made of plasma.
That's what they look like
They're
on film.
physical.
When I zoom in, it looks like a plasma ball inside of an orb that's moving at tremendous speed.
Right.
And some of the ones I record turn into like aliens or ghosts or all types of crazy stuff.
I've heard that. I've
But
seen some pictures that showed faces.
yeah, they'll change into a face for a second and then go back into an orb and just continue on. Like they actually will show
But
themselves to the camera.
but I've never seen that, only on film. What I saw was just the orbs. They were amazing.
Yeah, they do some incredible things. I've seen them like stop and turn around, go the other direction, all types of stuff.
I have French doors in my living room with a bunch of panes of glass, and they would go around the wooden framing and trace it exactly, and then go through the glass and be gone. Insects
Wow.
can't go through the glass.
No, no, not at all. Neither can dust. All right. I think that was all the images I had. I just want to double check. Yeah, that was it. So I'm interested what's going to happen in the future for you because it seems like you're on some type of path or almost on like a mission. I'm very curious to see where it ends up.
Me too.
Right? I'm sure you feel the same way. Like it's totally out of your control. Like you're on this ride, if you like it or not, right? So you might as well make the best of it
Right.
and try to learn something on the way. But real quick, I want to talk about your music. I was listening to some of your music earlier. When did you start recording music?
It was 3 or 4 years ago. I was listening to a CD that I meditate to, and I meditated to it for years, and it's exactly the same. And it's ambient sounds. And all of a sudden, and I was pretty deep in my meditation, but all of a sudden, a different kind of thing started playing, and it was different sounds, and it had rhythm, and it made sense musically, but not the way ours does. It was exciting. And about a year later, I heard some trap music and dubstep, and it was like that they were influenced by it. And I thought, a synthesizer would play this. So I bought a synthesizer and started making music and ended up recording a bunch of it. And it's all on sale on iTunes, and Jumping Shadows is a favorite one of mine. It's
Yeah,
on
me too.
iTunes and on Amazon. And
Nice.
I've actually found some of mine for sale in Russia. It doesn't have a big following. It's like jazz, but it's not like jazz. I don't know how to explain it. It's totally different.
Yeah, I like it. I suggest everybody go check it out. I know I actually cleaned my living room to some of these songs. There's another one, Alien Mechanism, I think it's called.
Yes.
That's another one of my favorites. I think the album overall is pretty damn good.
I have friends that put my music on and play video games and turn the sound of the video game off because my music helps them concentrate more and they can make higher scores.
That's funny. Oh, excuse me. So, all right, Byron. I'm going to wrap this interview up. I appreciate you coming on, taking the time out. I definitely plan on purchasing your book because I like to read that book and bring you back on. That way, I have can absorb everything. You have a very long story with a lot of information.
That'd be great. I'd love it.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you for coming on. I appreciate it, and I'll definitely stay in touch with you.
All right.
Thank you. Have a good night. All right, buddy. Sorry I missed some of the questions in the chat today. I had like 5 windows open. So I appreciate you guys for coming out. Infrared, Brandy Phillips, Stone Hobbit, Ghost. Man, it's creepy sometimes. Talking to a abductee and you got so many commonalities in your lives is pretty crazy. Thanks, Brandy. I appreciate it. So, all right, I'm gonna get out of here, and I think I have another video dropping in an hour. So I appreciate everybody for coming out. I'll see you guys somewhere on the internet later. Bye.